With us is Swan Bitcoin Managing Director Terrence Yang on Zoom from LA. Terrence, hey, nice to have you here with Matt and me. So what do you think of Bitcoin ETF and moves by BlackRock and Fidelity and others when it comes to a spot Bitcoin ETF? ARK has definitely been out there for a long time on that.
So thanks for having me. Great to be here. I think that the JP Morgans of the world may be underestimating how bullish this is. Why? Because even though gold ETFs did not cause that big of a jump in the gold market cap when the gold ETFs arrived, and Bitcoin so the argument is the Bitcoin Grayscale trust, right? GBTC already has a big market cap. And so therefore, if you look at the gold ETFs and compare what BlackRock and Fidelity and Invesco are doing and others, that maybe there's not much room for Bitcoin to grow. I think that's incorrect. Why? Because gold has been around for thousands of years. It's globally accepted. By the time the gold ETF came out, for Bitcoin to have this kind of institutional support from the top TradFi players, BlackRock, Fidelity, Invesco, and others, is massive. Yeah. This comes, by the way, in the face of the SEC going back to back against Coinbase and Binance a month ago.
But not for Bitcoin, right? I mean, the SEC is after those operators for what they consider to be securities. And I can imagine, I can see that point of view. Even if you argue they're commodities, you have to admit that they could look like securities, and a lot of them are just blatant securities. Bitcoin, however, the SEC has been very clear about it, is not a security. And I can't understand any reason they would have to fight against a Bitcoin ETF unless they think that the price of the underlying commodity is being manipulated.
And that is the core of the issue. Bitcoin is a commodity. It does not meet the elements of the Howey test. It's decentralized. Even Larry Fink, who 5 years ago, the CEO of BlackRock, 5 years ago said Bitcoin was basically garbage, has now come around and said Bitcoin is digitizing gold and is a global commodity or global asset. On your point about the market manipulation, the SEC Division of Markets and Trading does need to get comfortable that the surveillance sharing agreements that BlackRock, Fidelity, and all the others, including ARK and Cathie Woods, all their ETF applications, new submissions, resubmissions, they all have these surveillance sharing agreements where they're looking at Coinbase, they're looking at NASDAQ to make sure that there's no price manipulation. Here's the question. Is the SEC going to approve this in light of the fact that Chinese exchanges, I hate to say it, including Binance, OKCoin, and Huobi, continue to do what looks like significant wash trading and price manipulation? We'll see. So I think it's an open question as to whether or not the spot Bitcoin ETF gets approved soon. It will eventually happen. But yeah, the key issue is the market manipulation.
Do you think, Terrence, that those organizations you just mentioned are actively manipulating the price of Bitcoin, any more than some giant banks may actively manipulate the price of silver and gold?
Possibly more so, because even though, for example, JP Morgan has been caught manipulating certain precious metals and fined heavily, these are non-US entities that use a lot of tricks and ways to avoid.
We should point out that these are allegations. It's not. They are not uncommon. I would say conspiracy theory. I mean, that sort of paints it with a nasty brush.
Maybe conspiracy theory. Yeah,
but I'm just saying they're allegations because we can't say that. Yeah. You can't make that kind of statement.
We don't know for sure.
Here.
But if I were a betting man, and I would bet a lot of money that the Chinese exchanges are manipulating the Bitcoin price. It's just very hard to prove, right? But if I had to bet, yeah.
But so Terrence, do you think
point out people were convicted and
Yes, yeah, for sure.
So, yeah.
You're talking about the JP Morgan and silver. Yeah. But in terms of the surveillance agreements, do you think that they're going to be, is surveillance going to do much here? I mean, if we can't really pinpoint what's happening in terms of potential or alleged market manipulation, is Coinbase surveillance going to be able to do any better?
Especially since U.S.-Chinese relationships are so good right now.
Sarcasm.
Sorry. Yeah, a little sarcasm.
They can help, right? So the argument is that if you have a surveillance agreement, sharing agreement with a big enough exchange, such as Coinbase, having significant market share of the Bitcoin market, maybe that's enough. I personally think the SEC they have an inconsistency, right, where they approve futures, U.S. futures Bitcoin ETFs, but not spot, arguing that the futures Bitcoin prices were regulated on the CME and so forth. But at the end of the day, they all link back to Bitcoin, and the price, if it's manipulated in one sector, does impact another sector. So I think this can be short-term bullish until the market maybe figures out that a spot Bitcoin ETF may be a little bit further away than people think.
Can I ask your expectation for the price? I mean, I know it's a silly parlor game, but you did make a very good point. You did make a very good point, Terrence. You know, if all of the bullish money right now is already in GBTC, you know, then why would someone as massive, a behemoth like BlackRock, want to file for an ETF? They must think that 30,000 is not the limit.
That's one possibility, a very rational basis for doing so. Another possibility that I think is more probable is BlackRock and the others are betting on the fact, the non-zero chance, a significant risk that the SEC will lose, including on appeal, the litigation with Grayscale and GBTC, right? So Grayscale is suing the SEC, saying we want to be able to have a spot Bitcoin ETF. You should let us convert. And the SEC is saying no. So we'll see what the courts say. So if the courts rule in favor of Grayscale, that is going to open the floodgates for BlackRock and Fidelity and others to be like, hey, we're much more credible. We've been around longer than Grayscale and Barry Sobert and his shenanigans, allegedly. And we want our Bitcoin ETF, a spot ETF, approved as well. Why? Because they see opportunity. Why not file or refile?
Well, like you said about the credibility of something like a BlackRock or Fidelity, and just got about 30, 35 seconds. But I do think about those folks going down to DC with their deep pockets and lobbying efforts. I mean, and a lot more influence, correct?
Yes, a lot more influence. However, I don't expect a spot Bitcoin ETF to be approved for anybody, BlackRock or otherwise, by year end. But eventually, within 2 years, absolutely, it will be approved.
So it's just a timing issue.
In my opinion.